And also, as usual, if you have any question, any last questions that you want to raise, don't hesitate to use the Q&A. Today, we have a little bit more time compared to the day 1, day 2, and day 3. So if you have any question, we can review it by the Q&A window. We can review it live, and it's a good time to ask questions because later it's going to be more complicated. However, if you have any question later, you can always send an email to learnavi@vmware.com. And to help with the question today, we have Anna online. So Anna, if you want to say hi and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. It's really good to see how many of you are joining these workshops that we have. So as you can see, my name is Anna. I've been in VMware for over a year on the AVI pre-sales team. So I'm probably covering some of the regions that you are based in. So I'm covering Mediterranean and the Middle East Europe region. So if you do have any questions, you know my name. So search me on the LinkedIn and we can then chat regarding AVI always.
Thank you, Anna, for the help and the support today. So yesterday, you remember we have finished the security and all the things that you can leverage to secure AVI and also to secure your application. And one thing that I was mentioning is how you can basically translate or convert or migrate one F5 configuration to AVI. And I don't know if you remember, but I mentioned that within the AVI controller, we have a tool to do that. You will not do everything, but it's a good starting point. And I was mentioning that you will generate an Excel spreadsheet or CSV file with the results of each VIP. So yesterday I was unable to open this CSV file. So today I have it here on the screen, and I just wanted to share that with you. So actually, this is what the internal IT VMware team they have used. So as you can see, they have plenty of VIPs. So you see at the beginning, they were using F5, and following the acquisition of AVI by VMware, of course, they wanted to migrate those physical appliances that they had to AVI. So this is why you see all the different IDs here. So each line of this table, it's actually a VIP. And when you feed this script with the bigip.conf, because we are talking about F5 migration here, what you will do, again, for each VIP, you will generate an output. And for each VIP, it will tell you if the migration was successful or if the migration was partial. And for some of them, you see it's successful. As I told you yesterday, if it's a simple configuration, in this case, a tool can definitely configure or translate the F5 configuration to the AVI configuration. However, having said that, for some of them, you see that it's partial because, for instance, we have some I rules for this VIP. You see this line here. It was partial, and it tells you basically which item or which component inside this VIP was not translated, was not migrated. So as you can see here, there is an I rule saying this X forwarded 4 was not understood, therefore you need to migrate this manually. But the good thing is, as I mentioned to you yesterday, the good thing is plenty of features that are enabled by default with the AVI solution. And this X forwarded 4, if you have a look inside your application profile, you will discover that this is enabled by default. So another one here where basically you have nothing to do. But again, we want to be honest and transparent with you. This exercise will consume time because you want to make sure you are migrating whatever you have right now to AVI in a smart way. So sometimes, for instance, in F5, you have, let's say, 2 or 3 VIPs for the same application. You can probably consolidate those VIP in one virtual service in AVI. And if you do so, it will help later for troubleshooting, because when you are checking the logs, you have only one entry point, which is your unique VS, instead of having 2 or 3 VIP in F5. So again, this will require to think about your configuration and to adapt your configuration for your new AVI environment. But later you will benefit from it because it will be easier to maintain your new AVI configuration. Having said that, you see this CSV file, and as you can see here, it was from F5 to AVI. But as I told you yesterday, we have the same tool. If you guys, you are thinking about migrating your NSXT legacy load balancer to AVI, we have more or less exactly the same output. The only thing here is, of course, we will read the NSXT legacy configuration and we will translate to an AVI configuration. And if it's something that the tool cannot understand, probably someone will need to jump in and to have a look and to see how we can achieve the same with the AVI configuration. But at least you have a starting point. So this was something that I didn't cover yesterday because somehow this Excel spreadsheet was not available in my laptop. But today I just wanted to go back on this one just for a few minutes. Another thing that I just wanted to cover from yesterday's session. Yesterday I was a little bit short in time for finishing web application firewall. I just wanted to show you in the UI exactly where you can configure web application firewall. So let me go back to one of my VM here. And if I go back to my list of virtual service, if I edit the virtual service, just wanted to show you that yesterday I described that we have many steps when it's about checking if a request is legitimate. And you remember we have some steps that you can configure. I reviewed yesterday quickly the signatures, but if you want to see the different steps, you need to edit basically your WAF policy. And inside your WAF policy, you have this allow list, which is the first step. So you remember for some part of your website, of your application, probably doesn't make sense to check everything if it's images or picture, or if you know that this part of your website is very static. In this case, probably you will create a rule saying, oh, by the way, if the path of my request is /images, in this case, I want to create an action and I want to bypass, right? Because you know that it doesn't make sense to consume CPU and memory for this request because there is absolutely no risk. Or let's say you know exactly the origin of the request. You know the client, you know that this team is testing the application, not for a security standpoint, just to make sure it works properly. You don't want to consume the CPU of your service engine to check this request against the signatures. So here you have basically the location where you can configure the allow list. Remember, the next step is about positive security. So this is where basically the AVI will learn how your application works. The AVI will learn, it will notice that at this specific field for this specific request, we are expecting that you send your email address or your zip code or postcode, right? So in this case, if at some point after learning your application, AVI notices that something weird is received inside your request, in this case, the positive security will say basically, this is weird. This is not what I am expect. So I will send this against the application rules and also against the signatures. So you understand the idea is we want to make sure we provide something simple to configure. We want to make sure that also we are not burning your resources, burning your CPUs for each single request, because for some cases, it does not make sense to do so. So I just wanted to quickly review that with you. At least you know where it is inside the UI, and you understand the philosophy here that we are trying to solve. We want to make sure this is simple. We want to make sure it scales, and we want to make sure we provide the visibility. And I believe yesterday I showed you that you can see all the information related to web application firewall inside the analytics. So sorry for this quick recap of yesterday, and I just wanted to review things that I didn't finish yesterday properly. All right. Okay, I see one question. How can you download an Excel file to migrate from F5 to AVI? So actually, inside the AVI controller, you have a Python script that you can leverage. And this Python script, you will feed this Python script with your bigip.conf. And one of the output will be this Excel spreadsheet. So I cannot share this file because, again, it comes from the VMware IT, and probably I'm not sure if inside it we have sensitive information, but you can generate the same. If you are struggling to do so, again, just send an email to learnavi@vmware.com, and we can help you. We can connect you with different solution architect, system engineer who can help you. When you email us, just please mention where you are from. It will help us to direct your request to the appropriate people inside VMware. So again, if you are struggling, just send an email to learnavi@vmware.com as I am typing this inside this chat window. All right, so let's start day 4, analytics and troubleshooting. So one thing that I want to mention is the cloud services. Remember, on day 1, I told you as soon as you install your AVI controller, you need to take a decision about the location where you will store, where you will manage your licenses. And here you have 2 choices. You can say, I cannot connect my AVI controller to the internet. So in this case, you will manage your licenses inside your AVI controller. Or if you have the capability to say, it's not a problem for me, I have internet connectivity and I have no worries or no concern to say that my licenses, they will be managed in the VMware Cloud Services. In this case, you have this opportunity. And if you can do so, you have some great features that you can enjoy. We call those services Pulse or VMware Cloud Services. And basically, the idea is you want to you have your own managed AVI controller, right? But you want to make sure that this is connected, this will be updated, and you will see even that this capability can help you to create some use cases, some CSR. If you have some issue, you can directly from this create a CSR use case, a support case to make sure that someone can help you to fix your problem. So basically, as you can see here with this Pulse service, which again will require to have your AVI controller connected to the internet, we have different features. One of them is the enhanced support case management. I will explain what it is. And the others is the live security threat update, along with the central license management. So if we start by the central license management, the idea is, again, because your licenses, they are installed and they are managed in a central location, which is in the cloud, in the VMware Cloud Services. In this case, you don't have to do the breakdown. You don't have to say, oh, by the way, I have 3 AV controllers, one in New York, one in London, and one in Singapore. And I need to think about how many licenses I need to install in New York, how many licenses I need to install in London, and how many licenses I need to install in Singapore, right? Instead of doing that, you have one central location, which is a VMware Cloud Services, where you can manage your licenses from this location. And automatically, each AV controller will connect to this VMware Cloud Services and will say, oh, by the way, today I need 4 licenses for my service engine in New York, 6 in London, and 2 in Singapore. So you see here, it's better to have one central license management location instead of having to somehow decide per AV controllers. Of course, it makes sense if you have more than one AV controller. The second benefit of Pulse is about live security threat updates. So remember yesterday I showed you in the UI, going back to the UI just to make it clear, if I edit one of my virtual service here, we have some database that you can enjoy out of the box. You remember if I show you the network policy here, what do we have? We have an IP reputation database and we have a GeoDB database, right? So those databases, of course, you don't want them to be static. You want to update them. What else do we have? Well, remember what I've showed you for the web application firewall just a few minutes before. If I just create a WAF policy, what do we have inside a WAF policy? We have signatures. You can see the signature here under application rules, and you can see also signatures just there. So we have different database to protect your application. And again, we want to make sure that those databases, they will be updated. So here you have again a choice. If you can say, I want to enjoy Pulse, I want to enjoy VMware Cloud Services because my AVI controller can be connected to this infrastructure. In this case, automatically, you will see that your AVI controller will be updated, right? If you can't, in this case, you can always do this manually, which is more painful, but it works. And the last pillar of this VMware Cloud Services is about the support case management. So let me explain a little bit what it is. If you need to create a case or CSR manually, it can be a little bit complicated. It takes time, and we have all experienced this. Basically, what happens, you have client of your application complaining. You need to find the appliance, especially if you are using a legacy load balancer. So basically, you need to find out, okay, what is this application? It's using this VIP. Where is this VIP? Or it's installed in this specific active standby pair in my data center. Then you need to do a TCP dump, right? Because you need to understand exactly what is going on. So then you need to transfer this TCP dump file. You need to understand what is happening. And at some point, again, you will create a support case. Probably you create a support case and you miss few information. So the vendor support team will tell you, oh, by the way, we are very happy to help you, but give us this kind of information. You include the tech support in your case. And at some point, you will get an answer. So it's a lot of waste of time. So the idea behind the scene, what we want is to make sure that very quickly you can access to the support team and you can get some real answers, right? And as you can see here in this flow of actions, you can see that most of the actions, they are very manual. And again, like I mentioned in day one, in AVI, what we want to do, we want to make sure that you can do more with less, right? What I'm saying here is think about the amount of applications that you have inside your organization. It's always going like this because we have app for everything, right? So if you still need to manually configure those apps, it does not scale. And this is where AVI comes in because we want to make sure that we automate things for you. So even for this topic, we want to help you. So how can we do that? Well, the idea is if there is a system failure here, what we can see is we can directly connect to the AVI controller. And from the AVI controller, from the UI of the AVI controller, we can create a CSR, we can create a case, right? A support case. So automatically, we can say from the AVI controller, I have an issue with this service engine. And you know what? The AVI controller knows your environment, right? He knows that the service engine failed at this time. He knows that the service engine is inside NSX or Azure or GCP. And he knows his own version of software that he is running. So the idea is automatically, he will gather all the information that my colleague in the VMware support team, they need to help you. So first, this is how we can help you by using this central location here, which is the AVI controller. And again, because the AVI controller knows your environment, it knows everything. And here you see that still we have some manual tasks or actions that are required on your side, but after it's green, so it's fully automated. How we can go further? Well, we have something called the zero touch support experience. If basically a service engine fails, in this case, automatically the AV controller will notice this. And without asking any human intervention, the AV controller will create a use case thanks to the AV Pulse service. So again, here you can enjoy this only if you have your AV controller connected to the internet, indeed. But if this is the case, everything is fully automated. So I used to do a demonstration of that, but I cannot do that any longer because if I do this demonstration, actually it will probably wake up someone in Asia or someone in the US probably because it's still night over there, right? So I cannot do that. But the idea behind the scene is here we are leveraging a mechanism that you guys know. I don't know if you remember. On day 2, I was demonstrating a control script. What is a control script? And I told you, you remember the data script, it's about data plane, right? It's more or less like iRules, but with a more modern programming language, which is Lua. We have also control script. And as the name suggests, the control script is about automating the control plane, right? And here we are talking about what? We are talking about control plane. So basically, as soon as the AV controller will notice that this service engine is dead, it will leverage a specific control script. And this control script, remember, it's just a Python script which will connect to the REST API of this VMware Cloud Services, and it will create the case for you. So what I'm saying here is we are just leveraging specific features of the product. And because we have a modern product, because we have this new architecture here compared to the others, we can do stuff that it's very complicated for them to do because they have all the technology, right? So just wanted to tell you how it works behind the scene. And if you are interested, actually, you can even go to the UI of the AV controller and under operations, under alert config here, you will see that we have some stuff that you can see out of the box without any configuration on your side. And you will see that one of them is system process crash proactive support. So this one by default is not enabled. It's up to you to enable it. But you can see that if something happens, automatically a support case will be created for you, right? And just to make it clear, remember what I have explained on day 2 about the fabric of load balancer. If you are using something more modern in terms of high availability than active standby, so if you are using, for instance, active or N plus M buffer, if this service engine dies, what will happen? Your AV controller will self-heal this guy. It will create a new one, will replace this service engine. So here we have kind of 2 mechanisms to make sure that you are safe. Automatically, the AV controller will self-heal this service engine. Plus, we will create a support case for you just to make sure that we can monitor what happened in your environment. Just to illustrate a little bit what you need to do if you want to enjoy this Pulse of these VMware Cloud Services capabilities. So under administration, basically, you have something under settings. Remember under, sorry, it's not settings, it's licensing. Under licensing here, you have this wheel for the settings. And here, you need to make sure that you select this guy, Enterprise with Cloud Service tier. I'm not using it right now, as you can see. It's just because I want to enjoy some temporary licenses. But if you want to leverage all that the things that I have described, you need to make sure this one is selected. And later, what you need to do is under cloud services here, you will need to make sure that your AVI controller is registered. And when you do that, you have the capability basically to opt in or opt out for different features that I have mentioned. You can say, oh, for the cases, for the support cases, I don't want to use these features, so you can opt out. But you can say, I want to make sure I have the latest IP reputation database, and therefore you can opt in for this one. So you have the choice. At the end of the day, you are the one who can choose, but we want to give you the tools, the capabilities, the features to make sure that you can operate the AVI solution in a very easy way. All right, so it was a quick introduction about this VMware Cloud Services, and now we're going to speak about analytics and troubleshooting. This is quite important because, as I told you many times, the value proposition of this product, one of the big benefit for you is analytics. So how analytics works? Remember at the beginning, I've told you that when you have an application, the first thing that you can see very easily is this health score. So for each application, we are not giving you just a binary status. Is it green? Is it red? No, we are giving you some information about your application. And you want to leverage those information because they help you to troubleshoot. It gives you also a trend about how your application is behaving. And I want to explain to you how it works and how you can customize this. So when it's about health score, basically, the first thing that you will get is a performance score, right? As you can see here, I have a performance score of 94. So this performance score, it comes basically from some criteria which are very much tied to the latency or how fast or how slow your application is to reply. So this is quite important to understand this. Sometimes you will see some applications, they have some bad performance score because they are slow, right? And we based this on something called Abdex, which is something well known in the industry, which basically defines some criteria in terms of latency to tell if your application works properly or if it's like okay or if it's not good, right? And you can see those values just here. If you have something between 0 and 500 milliseconds, we consider this as a good value. If it's 500 to 2 seconds, it's okay, and above this value, it's not good at all. And you know how it works. I mean, I'm sure you have kids. I have kids. If an application is slow, what do? You leave your tab, you leave your browser, and you are going to another application. So it's quite important to monitor this. And if you see nowadays with the microservices type of application, so you know, instead of having a big monolithic application, you have plenty of microservices. And all our competitors, what they are doing right now, they are monitoring the latency between the microservices. So we've done that for years, and we still believe this is something quite important to monitor the latency, right? What else do we have in terms of criteria for this performance score? As you can see, if, for instance, your application generates a lot of 403, a lot of 404, a lot of errors, basically, this will affect the scores that we give you for this performance score, right? But the good thing is you can customize this. You can say, I know that this application specifically, it is okay for this application to generate this 403 authentication error. This is how it works. You like it or not, but this is like this, right? So for those kind of application where you know that they have some specific behavior, you can definitely customize your analytics profile. Inside your analytics profile, you can change the value. You can say, I want to make sure that if I see those errors, I don't want this to influence or to affect my performance score. Same for the latency, same for the error code here. The second one is on the top of this performance score, we will give you some penalties. The first one is the resource penalty. This one is pretty self-explanatory. Resource penalty, let's say you have service engines. One of your service engine is at 80% of CPU. You don't have configured auto scaling, so the AVI controller, you will not allow him to basically to scale your virtual service automatically, but still the AVI controller notices that and it will give you a resource penalty. Same for your application server instances. Without installing any agent on your backend servers, for some environments, we can definitely see the load of the VM, the load of the backend server. We can even monitor the load of the host of this VM to make sure that we have enough resources. If it's not the case, again, what we can do, we can create an alert, we can take some action, we can even scale the backend servers group, especially in public cloud, and we can definitely give you a resource penalty because we know that we are lacking something here. Anomaly penalty, I like this one because it's very interesting. With AVI, remember, we record what is happening for your application. So it's not like, in F5 or in the others, you need to do a TCP dump to understand what is happening here. You have a history of the pattern of your traffic for your application, the pattern of the how many requests per second, the request rate that you have for your application. Same for the TCP UDP connection, right? So we know exactly how your application was like 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, or yesterday. So if there is a big change, in this case, you will get an anomaly penalty. And that's good to have this one because let's think about a scenario where you have a firewall and then behind the firewall, you have your load balancer, and behind the load balancer, you have your application server instances, right? Let's say if someone messed up the firewall configuration, you will receive no traffic from the upstream firewall, right? Because there is a rule that has been modified, and this rule is there is a mistake, right? So in this case, AVI will automatically give you an anomaly penalty because no traffic coming to your service engine. But again, we know that before, let's say last week, you had this amount of traffic and right now no traffic. So we can anticipate situation like this. And of course, the idea is you can create some alert saying if the health score is below this value, in this case, I want to make sure I will receive an email, I will receive a syslog message, I will receive an SNMP trap, or I can leverage a control script, again, if I want to automate something by interacting with a third-party API, for instance, right? The last one is security penalty, and I think we covered it a little bit yesterday. Remember, if we have a self-signed certificate, if you are using like weak ciphers for your TLS certificate, for your TLS session, in this case, again, you will get a security penalty. So at the end, you have this health score that you can see here in the slide that gives you information about the health of your application. And the idea is you can understand later why you have this health score. We'll show you this in the UI. If you have something, let's say, below 65, you can probably improve the behavior of your application. If you are, let's say, above 65, 70, something like this, it's pretty good. So you are good to go. So you need to have also some value in mind just to make sure to understand if you need to worry, if you need to have a look, or if it's basically business as usual. All right, so let me go to the UI and let me show you this in action. So actually, I will go to my demo environment, this guy here, right? So again, you just mouse over here and you have exactly what I have described, the performance score, the resource penalties, the anomaly penalty, security penalty, and you end up with your health score, right? So if you need to understand a little bit more here, what is happening, if I click on my AVI demo virtual service, of course, you have the end-to-end timing here. You have also on the right panel here, you have all the pools that I am using for this virtual service. And as you can see here, one of the pool here, it gets a health score of 50. And so you see that probably something is not good for this specific AVI demo pool. And if I go back actually to my dashboard here, I really like this tree view here where I can basically see in one location all of my health score. So from my virtual service, from my pool, and as you can see here, probably something is wrong with the server. If you're mousing over, you see that it's marked down by a health monitor, which cannot basically resolve this MAC address which is for this IP, right? So I know that there is, immediately I know that there is an IP issue for this forced backend server, right? So let me go back to this virtual service here. And let me show you in the configuration, if you want to change some values that I have mentioned here, you can always edit your virtual service. And from this advanced screen, you can see that you have this analytics tab. And you will get plenty of parameters related to the analytics inside the analytics profile, right? So you can create some specific analytics profile, or you can use the system analytics profile. So most of the time, let's say if you have a normal application, you don't need to create a new one. But if you need to change some specific stuff, just create a new one and you assign this new profile to your specific application, just to make sure that AVI will not worry, or will not, I lose my word, will not be happy about this specific application, right? So if you edit this analytics profile, what do we have? You remember this AppDex things that I mentioned in terms of latency, what is acceptable, what is good, what is okay, or what is very frustrating. In this case here, you have all those timing, latency just here in this part of the screen. And if you want to exclude basically some response that you think they are okay, even if they are HTTP error, for instance, here, you can specify directly here the type of HTTP error that you want to exclude for being a wrong response, right? So you have all the information here at the application layer, but you can also, for the lower layer here, you can also include or modify some ratios that we have by default about how many TCP retransmits I am doing, what about the TCP timeout, also the out of order packet, and so on and so forth. So you have all the information here if you want to tune, if you want to adapt this analytics profile for your application. Same here. Before we were at the application layer, now we are at the network layer, so you can basically include or exclude different type of errors, and they will be ignored if you add them here, right? And here you have also some health score analytics parameters that you can leverage if you want to change basically how it behaves, right? So this is here what we have for the analytics profile and how you can change the behavior if you need to. All right. The second one that I want to mention here is the metrics. right? Because when you create a virtual service, one thing that you want to check, especially at the beginning, is the real-time metrics and logs, because this is your single entry point to troubleshoot and to make sure that your application works properly. So what you want to see is you want to understand how it works. And to do that, I will go again to my demonstration environment, this guy here, to show you that inside the configuration, under the analytics profile, under the analytics tab here, we have this option, real-time metrics. And basically here you define for how long you want to enable this real-time metrics. So if you create a virtual service on the Academy controller, you will see that by default, this real-time metrics is enabled for 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, basically it is disabled automatically. However, if you have very or extremely sensitive application where you want to get this real-time metrics all the time, you have this option here. You put 0, which is basically unlimited amount of time, and you will get this real-time metric for forever, right? So what is the difference if you enable or disable the real-time metrics? It's about basically the period of time that you are gathering the metrics. So you see here for service engine here is going to be each 5 seconds. If you are in real-time metrics, if it's not, it's going to be for 5 minutes, right? So again, it depends of your application. We have a best practice here. If you have hundreds of applications, don't enable this real-time metric for all of your application, because the idea is you don't want to overload the AVI controller. Think about the logs. It's a pretty heavy component of the solution. It's very powerful, but you don't want, let's say, to send too much log to your AVI controller or too much real-time metrics in this case to your AVI controller. So be balanced, be reasonable. Just select the application that you need to troubleshoot, for instance, or again, some very sensitive applications that are very important for you. In this case, for those ones, you can keep this enabled. Otherwise, for the others, you can just disable it and just leverage the 5 minutes non-real-time metrics. What I want to mention here as well is those different real-time metrics, they exist for virtual service, and they exist also for service engine, and they exist also for pools. So let me show you in the UI. If I go directly to this guy here again, let's say here I want to have the details of this application. You see this AVI demo, it relies on 3 service engines. They are all active simultaneously, right? And I want to see the real-time metrics of the service engine. So I just click on it, and you will see automatically I'm going to the analytics of the service engine. So the analytics, it goes beyond your application. It is actually tied to all the components of your application. And when it's about your application, what do you have as a component? You have the load balancer. So in this case, we are talking about the service engines, the data plane. You have the pools, and you have the servers. So all of those components, we are monitoring them. And to do so, we provide real-time metrics, right? So here for the service engine, what can I see? I can see the throughput. I can see the CPU usage. Oops, I need to log in again. So I was saying I can see the throughput, I can see the CPU usage, memory usage, I can see the amount of packet received, the amount of packet transmit, the interface throughput. You can even see the virtual service throughput. So you have plenty of real-time metrics. And again, here, you can collect those information at an interval of 5 seconds or an interval of 5 minutes. right? And for service engine, guess where you will configure this? Remember, at the end of the day, a service engine, it belongs to a service engine group. It will inherit all the features, all the parameters from the service engine group. So if I go to my service engine groups here, and let's say I create a new one here, at some point somewhere, like here it is, you have the real-time metrics. So if a service engine group belongs to this new group that I am creating, it will send basically for the first 30 minutes all his metrics in real times. If I change this value to 0, it will do it like this forever, right? So you understand for the service engine group. We have exactly the same for the pool because we are providing metrics for all the components of your application, including the pools and specifically the pool members, which are the servers, right? So if I go back to my dashboard here, and I go to my application dashboard, I extend my VS here, and I want to see the real-time metrics for this guy here. You see what is happening here? I can see this pool member, this server basically, which as you can see, it relies on Docker here, but it's not important. What I want to show you is we have the capability to get all the information. You see here that I can see the CPU consumption and the memory consumption. And what you can see here is for the CPU, we can see the CPU of the VM, but because it's a vCenter environment, we are also gathering all the information related to the host where this specific VM runs, right? And same here for the memory. So we know exactly all the information that we need for this specific pool member. And again, a pool member or a server, it belongs to what? It belongs to a pool. So if you want to enable this real-time metric or disable it, where do you go? You go to the pool. This is server-facing configuration. So if I check this specific pool here, at some point somewhere, I will surely find this option. So we have changed a little bit the UI here. So I am a little bit lost, but I'm sure there is somewhere something telling you if the real-time metric is enabled or disabled. Where it is, I think, let me try to, okay, you see here, so enable real-time metrics. So we know exactly that right now this is enabled. So you can enable it again and disable it. So going back to this slide here, remember when I've told you we can give you a resource penalty. It's because we can read those information about real-time metrics for your servers, for your service engine, and we know exactly the health of your virtual service. So it's quite powerful. And again, inside the AVI controller, we don't need to install any agent on your servers. Nothing is required. In this case here, specifically for this vCenter use case, we can communicate with the vCenter API, and automatically from the vCenter API, we gather all those metrics and we are providing them through the AVI UI. All right, let me just go back quickly to the metrics because I want to show you a few other things. So here you have the different metrics of the virtual service. And again, as you can quickly understand here, you can display this for the last 30 minutes. You can display this for the last 6 hours, past day, etc. So all those information, they are here. You have the end-to-end timing of your application. You have the throughput. You have the open connection, the connection rate, the request rate, what HTTP protocol you are using, and some information about bot prevention. That is it's a new feature that we have introduced recently. It was in tech preview before, now it's fully available. And in the next workshop in November, we will cover this specific topic as well during Security Day. So if you want to share or to attend again, don't worry, you can always sign up for the new workshop in November. We will review this during day 3. Right, so you have all the information here related to the metrics. The next one that we want to see, and just something else here, when you have this end-to-end timing here, it's quite important to monitor this one. I believe I've told you how we can troubleshoot this peak of latency on day 1, and it's quite important to monitor this frequently. Now let's talk about the logs, right? So you have the analytics tabs and you have the logs. So one thing that I want to explain, first of all, is you have 3 categories, and out of the box, you have 2 categories of logs. You can you have out of the box the significant logs and the non-significant logs. So the significant logs, it's basically when there is something wrong. When AVI thinks that this specific request has not been handled properly. Let's say you have an HTTP 404. So for AVI, this will be classified or categorized into a significant log. Let's say this request was extremely slow, like 5 seconds, for instance. AVI will see that this is too slow. He will say it's a significant log. And you have another one, which is a non-significant logs. And this one is basically when everything is fine. It's a good traffic. And again, by default, AVI will drop those non-significant logs. Again, by default, right? But nothing prevents you for your significant application, sensitive application, you want to enable it, you can do it in the UI. And the last category that we provide is basically the user-defined filter logs. And this one is quite interesting. Let's say you have a new application. You have a new application, you release the application, and you want to classify or to categorize some logs coming from specific clients. So you know you have a specific IP range of clients, and for those guys, you want to monitor how it goes. In this case, again, you can create a user-defined filter logs category, and basically, in this case, you will see a third category of log. But out of the box, I've told you that you have the significant logs and the non-significant logs. The very impressive things about the logs is the amount of data points that we are recording for each request. So probably you will think, oh, you already told us this, and I already showed you just this guy here. This is for one specific request. This is all what you get for the client. For the load balancer, you know everything. And for the application server, you know also everything, including the HTTP header. In this case, I showed you that we can manipulate those HTTP headers yesterday by replacing, by adding, or by removing headers, right? So you know that we have this capability here. But what I want to tell you is what you are seeing in the UI, this is not the entire data points that we have that we record for a specific request. Why? Because you are in front of you a UI, right? And this UI, it's complicated to display everything, right? We want to keep it clean, neat and clean. Therefore, we try to expose or to display only the main things, the things that we believe they are useful for you. But we have way more logs than the ones that you can see here. Let me show you. If I export those logs here, so right now you see for the past day, so let me do something more less aggressive. So I'm going to display the past 15 minutes, right? And you see it takes time to display the logs. We'll explain exactly the reason why a little bit later. but after a few seconds, you should get the list of the significant logs, so basically errors, for the last 50 minutes. So if you want, you can display a specific time. So you can do something like this. I'm always struggling to do that. So you see here, now I'm doing a specific request only from 10:51 a.m. to 10:53 a.m. So you can filter the time here. And I believe, of course, you can do exactly the same through the API, right? What I'm doing through the UI here, don't worry, you can do exactly the same through the API. And then what I can do here, I can export those logs. So here you see I have 313 logs displayed, and you can decide I want to export them all. So I will select this one here. And what he will do here, he will create a CSV file. And I download this CSV file and I will open it. And from here, you will see all the different details in a CSV file, right? And my point here is you are seeing much more than what you can see in the UI here. Some of the columns, as you can see, they are blank because we are not leveraging these specific features. For instance, here you can see bot management, and this is not enabled for this virtual service. So that's why it's empty, right? But from here, you can see all the things that we are recording for a unique request. It's about hundreds of data points that you can retrieve like this. Or, of course, you can leverage a specific API call to get those information if you need that, right? So now I've told you about the three categories, right? Significant logs and non-significant logs. Of course, from here, from the UI, you can choose to display only the significant logs, or you can choose also to display the non-significant logs. It's really up to you. If you want to make sure that you enable the non-significant logs, you can just edit this virtual service. And from the Analytics tab again, here you have the option. Do I want to enable the non-significant logs or not, right? This is here that you can select or disable or enable this specific option, right? And from this option here, we have some throttling kind of features to make sure that we will not overload the AVI controller with the logs. And you can also define for how long you want to enable the non-significant logs, right? And here for this virtual service, we have decided to keep them enabled forever. That's why it's a 0 that we have configured, right? So what are we doing here? If you think about the amount of information that we provide, we are helping you to make sure that you can troubleshoot your application. This is the main use case. We want to make sure that anything related to your application, you will see it very quickly. Remember what I've told you? Today we have many applications. It's going crazy, the amount of application that we have. So if for each application, we need to do a TCP dump, we need to SCP this file, this pcap file, we need to open it, and you need to understand exactly what is happening, it does not scale. With such UI here, you can very quickly find the root cause of your problem. That's why we provide this, to make sure with less, you can do more. And sometimes, let's be honest, you want to see packet capture, right? It could happen that at some point, I want to see the traffic live. So I can see plenty of information from here. That's very good. You remember that on the right panel here, you can have some other information about the logs that you are displaying. So if you want to see, for instance, which service engine I am using, which load balancer I am using for those logs, you click on it and you can see that we are using those 3 service engines in active, 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 right? If you want to see, let's say, the response code of my application, I want to understand if this application behaves properly. What are the top response code? Yeah, that's cool. 77%, it's 200 OK. I have only 8%, which is 404. So think about those information. They are so important for you, and they are so important for the application team as well. And yesterday, hopefully you understand that we have the capability with the multi-tenancy and also the role-based access control just to expose a fraction of this to make sure that even your application team, they can see how the application work and to understand if there is something wrong and to help them. You want to see from which country the clients they are coming, just click on this one here. And now you see exactly the breakdown based on the different countries. So we provide all those information out of the box. You have nothing to do, just enable the proper analytics configuration and you will get this. I've said that sometimes you will need to do some TCP dump. And we know that, but even for this one here, we wanted to help you. How do we do so? Well, if you go under operations here, you see this traffic capture. So from here, we will help you to do a smart TCP dump. Because think about in your active standby load balancer pair, what would you do? You need to open your spreadsheet. First, you need to check which load balancer is configured for this VIP. You connect and you start your TCP dump. But with AVI, it's a little bit more complicated because for a single virtual service, you know that we have multiple service engines active. I showed you before, for this unique VS here, we have 3 service engines. So do you think you guys, you will connect to 3 service engines, you will start the TCP dump, you will get all the file, you will merge the file, I don't know, it's very complicated. So here again, even for the capture, we can orchestrate actually this for you to make sure it's very efficient. So first of all, the entry point is which virtual service I want to capture. So let's say this one here, this AVI demo app team called me and said, oh, my AVI demo app does not work. I want to make sure to understand for each packet what is going on. And this is where you will say, oh, okay, I want to filter everything for this virtual service, or I want to specifically choose a client IP or an IP range or subnet mask, right? So in this case, let's go for all the traffic, and you can define the number of packets that you want to capture or the duration of the capture, right? And something quite important as well is you can define, do I want to see the health monitor from the service engine to the application server, or I want to exclude those packets from my capture? So you have those advanced settings. And more importantly, here you have this key here that you can specify if you enable it. In this case here, you can see the clear capture of your traffic, right? So even for this, you don't need to think about which load balancer I am using. You just need to think at the application level. I am using this application. I want to do this TCP dump capture, and you click start capture. It will create a capture, and then later you can download the pickup file directly from your laptop from this AVI UI, right? So hopefully you understand the value here. It's really to help you, and again, to make sure that your organization can scale given the amount of applications that you have to manage in those different environments. Again, what I'm showing you to you here, it works for bare metal server, it works for virtual machine, it works for containers. So it's one single product for all those environments, and those things that you are seeing, again, they are not tied to vCenter or they are not tied to AWS or GCP. You have the same amount of features for all those environments. All right, so usually at this point, we get a question about, that's great, I have all those logs, but I want to make sure that I can use those logs or send those logs to something else. And this something else can be something like this, where basically you have your service engine, right? You have your application. And let's say for a specific application, you want to make sure that you are sending all the logs to an external solution, right? In this case, this is written Splunk, but it could be the solution of your choice. And basically for each application, remember, attached to an application, you have an analytics profile. And inside this analytics profile, you will basically say, I want the logs to behave this way. I want to make sure that my significant logs, they are going to the AVI controller only, right? But for legal issues or legal perspective here, I want to make sure that all my logs, they are going to an external tool where I can save these logs and I can record everything, etc. So we have this capability. And again, it's very easy. It can be done at the application layer. And again, not at the service engine or load balancer layer. You just need basically to go to your application list. And for your virtual service here, you just edit the virtual service. You go to the analytics tab again. And for this profile here, if you scroll down, what you can see is from the service engine, right? This is not from the AV controller. From the service engine, which are handling the traffic for this specific application, I'm saying I want to send some logs to this external server, right? So here I have two IPs that I have configured. And what do I want to send? I want to send all the logs, right? So from this screen here, you can influence how the logs can be sent to an external server and what kind of logs you want to send. So you see here, I am sending all the logs, but if you want, you can choose something different. You have the significant, you have the only the significant here, only the filter matching logs. So in this case, we need to define some criteria for those user defined. And you can also send the significant and the filter matching logs, or you can send everything, right? So this is what you can see, or what you can do, sorry, to send the logs to an external system. And then after, you can also define basically how you will process the significant logs, the user-defined logs, and the non-significant log to your AVI controller. You can say, I want to auto-sync and index, which means that basically the service engine will automatically send this log to the AVI controller and you will index it, right? For the user-defined category here, I have selected I want to sync and indexed on demand, which means that basically only if an AVI admin is coming and say, I want to see these user-defined logs, in this case, the service engine and the AVI controller, they will start to sync as the logs, and later the AVI controller will index those logs. You need to keep in mind that those operations, syncing the logs and indexing the logs, it is something which consumes CPU and memory. So you need to be a little bit careful here how you configure this for your production environment. And same for the non-significant logs here. You can decide if you want to do this automatically or if you want to do this on demand. And that's why when sometimes I go on my logs, on my AVI demo virtual service, I go on my logs here. And if you request, let's say, the past 3 hours here, you see here, it takes some time. Because for those significant logs here, probably we need to index them. So again, it takes some time. We need to sync them, especially if I enable this non-significant category here. You see, it's going to take some time for the AVI controller to process this specific request that we are doing. Remember what I've done, what I've told you on day one. If you go for a production environment, you need a 3-node cluster. And one of the reasons here is if you have a standalone cluster, just a standalone VM for your AVI controller, it does not scale. If you have the 3-node cluster, you have 3 times the power here, you have more resiliency, and it scales more because you have more CPU, more memory to handle this very powerful logs capability. And it goes back a little bit to the discussion that we have on day one related to the memory and the size of the disk for your AVI controller. Same for the service engine here. So we have some information that we share on this slide. And again, this session is recorded. The slide will be shared with you after the session later today. But for this sizing exercise, it's good to communicate with your solution architect or system engineer that you know, or it could be with your VMware partners, just to make sure that you do some wise choice. The good news is that if you somehow, if you don't do a right sizing, you can always change this later. You can always upgrade an AVI controller cluster by providing more CPU memory. And same for the service engine. You just need to go to the service engine group, you change the parameters, and little by little, you can upgrade your fabric of service engine by providing more CPU, more memory for each individual service engines which belong to this service engine group. So the good thing, this is a flexible solution. This is not like, the active, static, very static, solution with a legacy load balancer. So you get the point here, but it's good at the beginning, before deploying the solution, to think about the amount of CPU, amount of memory, and amount of disk that you want to use for your service engines and for your AVI controller. Something also quite nice is to export, to make sure that all the metrics that we have, you can export them to whatever system you are using inside your company. Because usually, especially for the teams which are handling the operations, they like to have one UI, right? They like to see everything in one specific window instead of having to jumping from this product to that product. And at the end of the day, they will miss some stuff. So if you want to make sure that you can see this, let's say in Grafana or in any other product, that's not a problem at all, because everything can be retrieved by API calls. Everything can be retrieved by sending the logs from an external system. So with those two things, we are sure that we can integrate the AVI solution with anything else if it's more efficient, more comfortable for you to have everything in only one UI. All right, having said that, I think I covered this first part, analytics and troubleshooting. Anna, I don't know if you have something to add here. Anything is good, so if you want to share something, don't hesitate.
No, I don't have anything to add. You covered that really good. So I just want to emphasize that if you are using legacy load balancers, I really hope that you get a chance right now to see what is the difference between troubleshooting AVI or troubleshooting some of the legacy load balancers that you might have in your environment. I am someone who was working for the system integrator and dealing with the customers and clients on the daily basis. When I came across AVI, it really changed my day-to-day operations. And, all of those hours that you spend by looking at an endless stream of TCP dump suddenly became like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe if there's some big problem, hour of your time, not anymore nights and days looking at those. So definitely analytics and ease of troubleshooting and operations are one of the biggest AVI benefits.
Thank you, Anna. And one thing that we like to tell is, and it happened many times. As soon as we have installed AVI in front of application, actually the application team or the network team, they have discovered that they had issue with this application. Before, basically, they were blind. Application, it works, but you know, some link were broken, and thanks to the analytics, again, if you have a look on those metrics, if you have a look on those data points, you will see that if your application works properly or not. So it's very good to have this great visibility. And again, if you think about, even if you don't have many applications inside your organization, if you think about the new architecture of application, I'm thinking about microservices. At the end of the day, you have one application with microservices. This big one application will be splitted into many small applications. So you need to have the capability to monitor exactly those small services, right? And again, if you don't have any analytics here, it's going to be complicated because, as Anna mentioned, it's going to be about TCP dump and understanding everything, you know, like following a flow in TCP dump. It is complicated. It takes time, and you want to make sure that you can do that in a very efficient way. So this is the intent with what we provide here, and hopefully this message is clear for you. All right, so having said that, let's move on to something else, which is how you can upgrade and how difficult or hopefully how easy it is to upgrade the AVI solution. So you remember at the beginning of the day, we were talking about creating support case or CSR if you have any issue. And guess what? When you are opening a CSR, what will happen is the post-sales or after-sales team will ask you, by the way, which version of AVI, which version of F5, which version of NetScaler you are using. And you will say, oh, I'm using this version. And they will tell you, oh, that's good, but we advise you first to upgrade. And this is where it's becoming a difficult situation, because for them, it's very easy to tell, right? You just need to upgrade and this bug will be fixed for you. But for you, it's very complicated. So we want to show you how it is with AVI, and we don't want to cheat here. Sometimes, of course, you're gonna have bump into this upgrade journey, but we want to show you how it works. And we want to show you first that you have the capability to upgrade without any outage, right? And this is the intent. You remember I showed you on day one that if you shut down the AVI controller, the service engine will continue to work in headless mode. This is not an ideal situation for sure, but it works. So service engines, they know they have their configuration pushed by the AVI controller, so they know exactly what they can do. Of course, for this situation, you will lose the visibility and analytics that I have showed you just before, but at least your application will continue to work, right? So the upgrade is exactly the same philosophy. We want to make sure that during the upgrade, especially for your sensitive applications, they will continue to work, they will continue to be load balanced, to be secure for VMs, bare metal servers, and containers, right? So how does it work? Well, let's talk about the life cycle of the software version in AVI. Usually in AVI, we have two major releases each year. So when we have been acquired in 2019 and 2020, it was a little more complicated. We were a startup, and being acquired by VMware, it was difficult to maintain this pace. But now we have retrieved the original pace, and we have two major releases each year. And usually it's like the year. So it's right now we have released 22 because we are in 2022.1.1. And later this year, we're going to release 22.2 something, right? And between those two major releases, we have like minor releases, which basically provide new features and also mainly fix some bugs, right? So the first thing that we want to tell you, as any organization, any vendor, you need to keep up with, let's say, an up-to-date release. And we have some versions which are long-term support. So if you are using those ones, probably it's a wise choice, because you don't need to upgrade your AVI estate like each quarter or that often, right? But that will happen as any other vendor, that to fix a bug, you will need to upgrade. So we want to make sure that this upgrade process is not difficult, and we want to make sure that you understand it and you understand how you can go through it. So the first thing that you want to do for any upgrade, you want to make sure you save your configuration, right? And you want to make sure that you save your configuration in a very safe location. So saving the configuration of AVI in the AVI controller is a good starting point, but it's not enough. So first thing first, you go to the UI. Let me go back to my AVI controller for this, because I have the full access here. You go to the UI, and under administration here, I think somewhere, I think it's under system settings. No, it's not. It's under settings, probably. No, it's not. It's under controller, sorry. You have something called configuration backup, right? So if you click on it, by default, if you don't configure anything, AVI will back up the configuration inside the AVI controller cluster, which again, it's like a little bit a chicken and egg story. So it's better to have something external here. You see here, you have configuration backup enabled. You have local backup enabled, but the remote backup here is deactivated. So you want to make sure that this guy is also enabled. So if you edit this specific configuration, you have few options here. First of all, you have a passphrase, and this passphrase makes sure that all the sensitive information within the AVI configuration will be encrypted, right? It's quite important, because you want to make sure that all the sensitive stuff that we know about, let's say, how to interact with vCenter, how to interact with your Infoblox IPAM, how to interact with AWS, all those credentials, they are safe and they are not in clear text, right? So this is the intent of this passphrase here. And as you can see here, you can define a backup destination. And the best practice here is definitely to enable a remote server backup. And here you will need to define, I think we support SCP for the transfer, and I think we support something else. I'm not sure if it has been released or if it will be. Oh, I can see that here actually. You see the list of protocols. So we have SCP, which is the default one, or we support also SFTP, right? So you select the ones that you like, and basically each day or the frequency that you will configure here, you will have this backup configuration file. In AVI, the backup configuration file, it's all about JSON, right? So the configuration is JSON file. Nothing complicated here. It's not a proprietary format, it's JSON. And you guys, you know that JSON is not very easy to read, but you can easily translate JSON to YAML. And in this case, it's very easy for you to read the configuration, right? So the first thing, you back up the configuration in an external server. When you have done that, you need to think about your upgrade path, right? Because you are running a certain version right now, but you need to double check that from this version, if you can upgrade directly to the new version, or if you need to go through different steps, right? So if you are running, for instance, version 16, which was released in 2016, you cannot upgrade version 16 to version 22, right? You will need to go to version 18, probably 20, and then 22. I don't know, it's just a guess, an assumption on my side, right? But the point here, you cannot go from this very old version to this very new version. So you need to check this. And to check this path of upgrade, you need to go to the release note, right? This is the effort that we ask you to do. And if you are not comfortable with that, of course, one of the system engineer or solution architect can help you just to make sure and to double check the information with you, just to make sure we want to avoid you any outage or any problem here, right? But this is the right thing to do to check the release notes. And then after, it's quite easy. You go to the portal, customerconnect.vmware.com. You select the AVI product, which is not called AVI, but which is called NSX ALB. And from this, you will be redirected to the AVI Pulse portal. And from this portal, you can download basically the files that you need, right? And this file, for most of the use case, it will be the same. This is a file called a PKG file, as you can see, except for the bare metal use case or for the container use case. In this case, you will need to download this file here, the .tgz, right? Otherwise, you download the controller.pkg and you have all the prerequisites done to upgrade your AVI controller. All right, from here, I like to say that you have two options. You have one, I mean, for my opinion, you have one reasonable option. Or if you guys, you are very brave, a little bit crazy, you can say, I want to upgrade everything. I don't care. And this will include my AVI controller, in other words, my control plane, but not only because I'm very brave, I want also to upgrade my service engine, my data planes, right? So this is something that you can do. For instance, if you have a lab, if you have a proof of concept environment, if you have a dev environment, pre-production environment, you get my point. You can go like this because if it fails, if there is an issue, if nothing works at the end, actually it's not production environment, right? So why not? But I think the more reasonable way, and for me, the best way, especially for production environment, is to make different steps when it's about upgrading AVI. So what I suggest here, for my opinion, the best thing is first, you upgrade your AVI controller, right? And once you will have upgraded your AVI controller, you can later upgrade the service engine, the data plane. And remember what I have told you on day 2, actually a service engine is always linked or attached to a service engine group. So at the end of the day, you will not upgrade service engines individually, you will upgrade service engine group. And as soon as you start an upgrade of the service engine group, you will upgrade all the service engines that are attached to this service engine group. So this is the philosophy here. First, and let's go for this production use case, you upgrade your AVI controller. You know the 3-node cluster that defines your AVI controller cluster. You will upgrade each node, right? And remember, even if later your cluster is completely down, which hopefully this will not happen, the service engines, they will still continue to work in a headless way. So without connectivity to the cluster, they will continue to do load balancing, to secure your application, to do GSLB, or to be like an ingress for your containers application. So this is the first step. You upgrade the cluster, right? So how to do that? Well, you download the PKG file that I've mentioned to you. And what will happen is this file will be checked. And later you will go to your AVI UI and you will say, I want to upload this file and I want to upgrade only my AVI controller. And whether it is an AVI controller cluster or whether it is a service engine, the process is more or less the same. The AVI controller will create a new Linux partition for this new version, and he will start this his OS on this new partition. So if something wrong is happening, you can always roll back to the older version. right? So this is how it works. So during this workshop, it's difficult for me to show you this live because I'm cautious about the time, and it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to upgrade an AVI controller cluster, right? So again, difficult for me to demonstrate this. But what I have done, I have created a video, and I like to share this video with you. We can fast forward the video just to make sure it makes sense in terms of duration, and you can see it live, even if, again, this has been recorded. So let me try to open my file here. So I think this is this video here. Open with VLC and okay, so let's see. Okay, hopefully you can see the video. And the first thing that I did here, I was checking the version of my AVI controller. So version 21.1.1. And again, what I want to see, I want to make sure that for my app one Hello World here, I want to make sure it works all the time. So what I will do a while true loop here, just sending plenty of requests to my application, just to make sure that during my entire upgrade, I don't have a single request which is lost, right? So you see my application is working here. And what I'm doing here, I go to customerconnect.vmware.com. I select the NSX ALB. I go to downloads here. And as soon as I click on download now, it will go to AVI Pulse, as I mentioned to you. And I want to upgrade to 21.1.2. So for all the environment except the container environment, as I told you, I need to download this PKG file, right? So you agree with that, and you save this guy here. And I think hopefully I fast forwarded the video, so the download is extremely fast here. I have downloaded this file, and now what I will do, I will need to come back to my AVI UI and to upload this file. So right now I didn't start any upgrade. I'm just going to the controller software screen. You see I have 21.1, which is the current one, and I will upload 21.2, right? So 21.2 is uploaded, or will be very soon uploaded in this AVI controller. Here it is. So we have a checksum that is checked for you just to make sure that we have a valid version. And right now I'm going to say, I want to upgrade from 21.1 to 21.2. This is simple, but here it's something quite important. You see, I have disabled or unticked this option, upgrade all service engine group. So if you disable this option here, you are saying to the AVI controller, I want to upgrade only the control plane, only my 3-node cluster. The service engine group, I will upgrade them later. This is what I have explained in my introduction here. I want to make sure that I don't want any interference. I don't want to create any outage for my application. This is the ultimate goal here. So this is what I have said here. And now you will see that it takes time. And for this one, to be honest with you, it was only one node. I wanted to get this video short, so it's only a one node, a standalone cluster, just one VM. So it was not that long, but still, you see, it took me a few minutes to do that. Plus, I fast forwarded some part of the video just to make sure it's not that long. As you can see here, this is fast forward. So you see here, controller updates, the process is ongoing here. So after a few minutes, you see that I can reconnect to the UI, but the upgrade is not finished. As you can see, I have my controller upgrade process. And my application, as you can see, is also still up to date. And by the way, I thought it was only a single standalone cluster, but it seems that I have 3 nodes. So I think I saw 3 nodes, so I did it. You see here, and now you see all the 3 nodes, they have been upgraded. I go to my application again, and okay, this is where I need to pause and to go back a little bit. Let's see here what happened. Okay, so just from this screen here, you can see that I have my 3-node cluster now, which is enabled, upgraded, right? So my 3-node clusters, they have been upgraded. So I have my AVI controller with version 21.1.2. However, my service engines, they are still running 21.1.1. So we have this capability to have a gap in terms of version, or difference in terms of version between the AVI controller and the service engine group. However, this gap needs to be in control, right? You cannot have a huge gap between the versioning of your AVI controller and the service engine group. All the details of this is fully documented in the release notes. So this is my step number 1 of my upgrade, my controller upgrade. This is what I have done with the video. And then later, what I need to do is my data plane. And remember here, this slide is called Service Engine Upgrade, but behind this title here, it should have been called Service Engine Group Upgrade. Because remember, a service engine, it belongs to a service engine group. So after service engine group per service engine group, you will define basically which one you want to upgrade. And this is good to have this flexibility or this granularity, because some application, again, probably you don't really care and you can upgrade them during the day. It's not very sensitive. It's not very important. That's good, right? You don't even care if there is an outage for a few minutes. So in this case, that's fine for those ones. There is no a lot of precautions to take. You just click the upgrade button for those service engine group and you're good to go. However, for production environment or very important applications, in this case, before upgrading the service engine group, you need to make sure that this application is scaled out. Why? Because if you have only one service engine for this application, when the service engine will restart, will reboot, what will happen? You will lose your application for a minute or so. And you don't want this to happen, right? So one reason or one way of avoiding this outage is if you scale the amount of service engine for your single application. In this case, AVI will take care of this. It will not upgrade 2 service engines which are shared by one virtual service simultaneously. It will start by service engine 1, and when service engine 1 will be upgraded, when it will be back online, in this case, it will do service engine 2, assuming that service engine 1 and service engine 2, they are used by your virtual service or by your application. So the first thing to check for an application which is sensitive is to make sure that this application has been scaled out, especially if you don't want to create an outage for this application during the upgrade of the service engines and the service engine group associated, right? So keep this in mind. This is why we have this diagram here. We want to make sure that your application has been scaled out. And how does it work? Well, it's exactly what I'm going to do in the video here. You know, I go back to my virtual service. I click on my application 1 Hello World here, and I make sure that I have 2 service engines. You see, it means that this application has been scaled out. So because I have 2 service engines, now I'm safe. I can continue my upgrade. So I go back to my administration tab under my service engine group update screen. And you see here, I select my default group and I will decide to upgrade only this service engine. So let me go back a little bit here. Here it is. So you see here I have the list of service engine group. So I know that this application, it runs on the top of my DC1 vCenter cloud, and it uses this default group service engine, right? So I'm going to select this guy here. You see, this guy is using still 21.1.1. However, the AVI controller, as you can see, is using 21.1.2. And therefore, if I select this, it will be upgraded to the same version as my AVI controller. So I click on it here, I select upgrade, and from here, you see you have something quite interesting. You have an option here. You can say, if this upgrade fail, what do you want the AVI controller to do? Do you want the AVI controller to continue this upgrade and to make sure you will find a solution to have Service Engine back online, or you want to suspend and basically send an alert saying, oops, there is an issue. One of the Service Engine failed and because of the upgrade, and you want you as an admin to intervene here and to do some action to resume or to roll back, etc. So you have the choice here to define what you want to do. Having said that, you have also some recommendations that you want to read and check before doing the upgrade. As soon as you have checked all those steps here, you can click on continue here. And now it will start the upgrade of the service engine group, including all the service engines which belong to this service engine group. So during this time, again, you can see my application is responding, and you can see that in progress, I can see the progress of this upgrade. And again, I will upgrade one service engine after another, just to make sure to not generate any outage for my application. You can see application is responding. This is fast forward, as you can see here, the speed of the request. And at some point here, I have my default group here, this guy. You see it has been upgraded to 21.1.2. The others, I will need to do them later. But for this purpose here, I have now my AVI controller at the same version level than my service engine group here. So later I can decide the others, I will need to upgrade them as well. And my application, again, was always available, no outage. All right, so I think I covered by this video, this slide deck about upgrade. This is exactly what I have demonstrated, the per service engine group upgrade. And when you do that, actually, you have a gap, a difference between the AVI controller version and the service engine group version. We have also some patching, which are a little bit lighter than the full upgrade. But the way how to do that, it's more or less the same as the upgrade. So having reviewed that, I think we covered this upgrade section. I don't know if we have any questions or anything you want to mention, Anna?
Hey, Nick, can you look at the last question in the chat from Christian? I'm not sure if I answered that correctly. I mean, I didn't answer it completely.
If we have a lot of service, is there a quick way to grab a snapshot of state of all pool virtual services so that we can check all services at the same state before, after upgrade for validation? So definitely API call will be one solution. Probably I'm thinking if we go to the UI, that's a good question. If we go to the UI here, you can have some information about each virtual service, but how to take a snapshot of this, yeah, I'm not sure. Probably by the API. This is also what I'm thinking. I'm not 100% sure how we can do that, to be honest with you. From here, you have the dashboard, right? So from this dashboard, here you can customize what you are seeing. The problem is if you go and click on this one, you will see only all the information for this specific virtual service. If I go to my virtual service list here, I can have some information about the throughput. For instance, if you want to check the throughput of all the application, that could be one thing. And you can always customize this specific view by adding some other information here if you want. So at least you have one view here. But if you have many virtual services, it will be split into different pages. So not sure it's going to work at large scale. Probably for this, you can just do an API call, and as Anna mentioned, you will get all the information in this CSV file. It could be one ID here. I can see another question here. For service engine group update, create new IC and migrate data plane to new and delete all DS. And if cluster exists, delete this one bill. Okay, I'm not sure to understand the question here. For service engine group, create new service engine and migrate data plane to new. Oh, I see. So yeah, I'm not sure you can do that. If you create a new service engine group, I think the flow here is, the proposition is you upgrade the API controller and later you create a new service engine group and you migrate a virtual service from the old service engine group to the new service engine group. If you do that, if I understand properly what you have asked, if you do that, it will create an outage. So let me show you, and Anna, let me know if you understand the same. But if I change
I'm not
my
sure
advanced
if I
tab,
understand question.
Okay, but if you change this value inside the virtual service, this will create an outage, definitely. So the idea is, yeah, go ahead.
But I'm not sure what is the question actually here. So if you want to upgrade SC group, you just upgrade it. You don't need to create new SCs.
Yeah.
For this, but if you want to have more SCs in your SC group, then you can add a new SC to that group and migrate virtual services actually manually to those new. But actually, you don't have to create the new ones to have a new version of the software because you are just upgrading existing ones.
Yeah, so just to illustrate this, if I go under infrastructure here, if I go under service engines, let me just customize this view here. I should get another column here, stages. Let me see. Service engine group. Okay. So let me filter this like this. So you see here, for each service engine group, I have an amount of service engines. So if I decide to upgrade my default group here, it will basically upgrade those 4 service engines in one after another, right? Not simultaneously. He will take this one, he will upgrade this one, and then he will go to that one, etc. So what we are saying here is you don't need to create new service engine to upgrade the service engine group. You just need to decide tomorrow at midnight, I need to upgrade my default group, and it will upgrade the 4 of them automatically. Now, if you want to add a service engine into this default group here, to do that, the best way is you go to one of the applications that you see inside this service engine. So you see, I can display all the virtual services that are using this specific service engine. And you can decide to say, I want to scale this application. And at some point, I'm saying at some point because sometimes you will need to wait a little bit depending on your HA mode that you are using. It will likely create a new service engine at some point, right?
Yes.
But go ahead.
Yeah, but also what needs to be changed is settings of that exact that particular service engine group, because if you limited number of service engines in it or number of virtual services per service engine, then it could depend what will happen. So basically you need to look at the setting of your group.
Exactly. And it's, let's be honest with you, here we have many parameters to determine how many service you will get inside a service engine group. We have explained this a little bit on day 2, but it's sometimes not easy to understand this because there is also the anti-affinity rules and other parameters which will intervene to determine how many service engine you will get inside a service engine group. So, but yeah, this is what you need to do. But just going back to the upgrade topic, to upgrade this default service engine group, you have nothing to do, right? You don't need to create a new service engine. You just need to say, I want to upgrade this service engine group. And again, one by one, the AVI controller will upgrade those 4 service engines.
Yes.
All right. So
I think that was the question. Yeah.
Good.
Awesome.
So it's 11:52 for me here. So what I suggest, if we have nothing to review, we can have a break for let's say until 12:10. I will display this on my slide, and we can resume this session by covering automation and closing this 4-day workshop and addressing also all the questions that you guys have. So if it's okay for you, Anna, we can have a break now. And thank you very much for your support and your help this morning.
Thank
And
you for having me.
and let's have a break until 12:10 CEST time. I will display this in a minute. Thank
Bye,
you, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you. Speak to you later. And oops, it's not this slide. Give me just 1 sec to bring the proper slide. Here it is. And to help with the Q&A, we have Massimiliano. Thank you, Massimiliano, to join us again for this last part of the workshop.
Yes, my pleasure. Hello again, because we met yesterday, but today I'm still here. So my name is Massimiliano, and I'm an AVI specialist. And today I will help with Nicolas in order to answer your question. So.
Thank you, Massimiliano. So we've covered this morning analytics and how to operationalize AVI, and also one big part was how upgrade works. And now we're going to finish this workshop by talking about automation. And actually, when we're talking about automation, we like to speak about API and REST API and JSON and all the things that we can do with the AVI API, which is good. And today you don't want to use a product without knowing that there is an API available for this product. However, we like to emphasize all the built-in automation that AVI provides. And if you think about what we have discussed for the last few days, for instance, the fact that we have a fabric of service engine, right? The AVI controller is capable of creating new service engine manually and automatically in any environment. This is fully orchestration automation. And this is possible because we have this integration between the AVI controller and your underlying environment. It could be vCenter with or without NSX. It could be AWS, GCP, Azure. It could be OpenStack. It could be Kubernetes. We know those environments and we know how to communicate with them. And when you think about the fact that we orchestrate the life cycle of the service engine in such environment, that's a lot of automation. This is exactly what you guys you do manually if you have legacy load balancers. You download an OVA of a big IP and you will do the network plumbing. With AVI, this is done fully automatically. You will need to think about which IP address I can use for those legacy load balancers. With AVI, it's done automatically. And then later, when you create a virtual service or a VIP on the top of those legacy load balancer, again, you need to think about how I will get this VIP. With AVI, it's done automatically. Which DNS I need to configure for this DNS entry for my new application. With AVI, it's done automatically. Same for your certificate. Which certificate I can use. With AVI, you can also automate this. So you understand that the value proposition of this product is to make sure that with your current team of network engineers or load balancer engineers or application delivery engineers, you can scale. And this is the capability that we provide here, just to make sure that given the amount of application that you have today, and this will likely increase significantly in the future, you want to make sure that you can still manage your application fabric. And this is what the AVI controller does with this built-in automation. So remember, we have reviewed this active self-healing fabric on day 2, and this is built-in automation. What else? Just the one that we have reviewed just before about the upgrade. When you think, it's also about automation or orchestration. You select what you want. The AVI controller will upgrade the service engine one by one to make sure there is no outage. You have nothing to do. You are just saying what you need, what you want, in a very declarative way to your AVI controller, and AVI will make sure it will orchestrate what you have asked to be achieved, right? So this is, again, the built-in automation of AVI. The analytics, you understand exactly the value proposition of this, and also this helps you to make sure you save some time when you need to troubleshoot your application. The auto scaling, for instance, this one is very related to automation because plenty of things that we have a controller does. This is related to automation, and this is manual tasks that you don't need to do. So you understand here that this is doable, this automation, because we have basically few things. First, the AVI controller knows your underlying environment, like VMware, AWS. You see the names that we have on this slide here. And now we are talking about how you can automate the AVI controller configuration and what you really want to achieve with your AVI controller. And to do that, it's this last chapter of this, to review this, it's the last chapter of this workshop. It's about how to automate AVI itself. How I can tell exactly what I want to my AVI controller. So of course, AVI relies 100% on the top of a REST API. And then after, it's your choice. You have many tools out in the market that you can leverage, that you can use to automate AVI itself. You can see some of them just in this slide here. Of course, if you are a big fan of VMware products for automation, you want to use VRO or VRA to automate AVI. If you come from the open source world, probably you love Ansible or Terraform to automate AVI. If yourself, you are a programmer and you know programming language like Python, Java, or Go, you can leverage the SDK that we propose, that we provide with the AVI product. What we want to tell you today is that we know that this automation capability is key for you today. And we want to tell you that if you work with AVI, let's say you have an issue with an Ansible playbook, or you have an issue with the VRO plugin that we provide, you can open a use case and your use case will not be ignored. Even if it's not directly on the heart of the AVI product, we will make sure we can fix your issue by handling this use case and by making sure that the ecosystem that we provide with the AVI solution is relevant and is working properly. So this is really the message that we want to share with you today. We know that this automation is very key. You have this built-in automation of the AVI controller, plus you want also to automate the AVI controller itself. We're going to review, I see a question from Christophe about Ansible modules. I will review this a little bit later. Right now, I'm just doing my introduction on this, but it's fully part of the presentation that we will see. So automating AVI, actually, as I mentioned, AVI has been built on a REST API, right? So everything in AVI is REST API. And actually, if I go to my AVI controller, and if I just, let's say, go to my application, and if I go on my internet browser here and I enable my web developer tools here, and if I click on virtual services here, you see exactly the API call that we have sent from the UI to the AVI controller API. So you see here, I did just a get of API / virtual services / inventory. And here you have some parameters that the UI just sent to the AVI controller API just to make sure it makes sense for the display here, right? But you have exactly the different stuff that we are using from the UI. So even the UI, it's a client of the AVI REST API. And then if you check here, we have the different responses. So you see the 13 VS here. And if you check, you have all the information that the AVI REST API have responded to this API call. So even the UI, it's a client, sorry, of the REST API. And sometimes it's useful because you want to understand how I can get this specific value, let's say about VSVIP here. And here it is. I know exactly the API call to get my VSVIP list that I have sent here, and I can see the response as well, right? So you see all the information, you see all the how you can interact with the API, right? But having said that, I want to show you that, I want to tell you that on the top of this REST API, actually, you have the choice to decide how you want to interact with this REST API. You can say, you know what, I know everything about this specific programming language, and I want to write my own code to make sure I can leverage, I can interact with this AVI REST API. So it's your choice, but if you want to do that, it's going to be a significant amount of work because you need to create function to handle how to create an API session. You need to handle functions, how to deal with network issue if you lose the connectivity between your program and the AVI API. You need to create a lot of functions, right? So it's your choice, but you have also another route that you can use is to use some SDK, right? And AVI provides out of the box some SDK. We have the Python SDK, the Go SDK, and the Java SDK. And again, they are fully supported component of the solution. So even if you have a problem with one of these SDK, you can open a CSR and someone will get in touch to make sure that this problem can be fixed. You can see our GitHub repo and you will be able to retrieve those SDK and to use them. Those SDK will avoid you basically to create a REST API session, to manage this REST API session. And along with those functions, you will get plenty of objects that you can use directly out of the box to get information about virtual service, service engine, a pool, etc. So you get all those functions that have been tested and designed for you to consume on the top of your favorite programming language like Python, Go, or Java. If you are not a programmer, if you don't know about programming language, probably you need to think about another option. And for this, we have also other tools that provide integration with the AVI controller. The first one that I want to speak about is Ansible. Ansible is something very well known in the industry to automate configuration as code. You have also Terraform, which is more oriented to infrastructure as code, but you can use it also to configure your AVI controller. And for those who are coming from a VMware background, probably you like to use VRO here. In VRO, we have a custom plugins that you can leverage. And basically, from this, you can do also the configuration. And as you can see, each of those tools, they are leveraging some SDK. Ansible is using the Python SDK, Terraform, the Go SDK, and VRO, this custom plugin is leveraging the Java SDK. So you can fit basically those tools, even if you don't have knowledge about the programming language. Ansible, it's about YAML files that you can use. Terraform, it's about HCL configuration that you will use to declare what you want. And VRO, you have the UI that you can use to feed the Java SDK, and at the end of the day, to interact with the AVI controller. So what you want on the top of these different tools, you can use them as a backend server, and to provide a front end to consume load balancers, to consume VIP, to consume virtual service. You can create a self-service portal. You can create your own one, or you can just leverage other platforms like ServiceNow or Vera or other kind of portals that you can use, and you can expose inside your organization to make sure that every application team can consume the AVI product in a very easy way, right? You can even use directly the AVI UI and expose only some part of the UI to make sure that everyone can use it in a very easy way. And of course, you want to leverage the multi-tenancy here and the role-based access control to make sure that an application team can only configure or only view the chunk of the configuration which is related to this specific team. So you have many routes that you can choose here to make sure you can automate AVI and to make sure that later it's very easy to consume load balancing and security for your application. You want to make sure that in a matter of minutes, you can create a new VIP for your new application. And a lot of existing customers of AVI or the NSX ALB solution, they like the solution, and one of the primary reasons was we want to make sure it does not take like days or weeks to create something. We want everything to be automated. So AVI is very well suited for this specific use case to accelerate how quickly you want to have your new application online. Let's talk a little bit about the foundation, which is a REST API. So REST API relies on a JSON object format, I should say. And each object, you will get something called a UID. So each object, it has a name, but the name is not the main information. Just to uniquely identify an object, we leverage this UID. So as you can see, for instance, I have this virtual service here, followed by this huge number. And this is my unique identifier that I will use to target this specific object name, right? The UID for each object is not something that you can change or you can modify. The name, we don't care, right? You can change the name, that's not a problem, but the UID is the unique identifier that you will use in your API call. And the good thing is, when you have an object name, you can easily retrieve the UID associated with this object name. We have some function to do that in Ansible, for instance. And then because it's a REST API, it relies on HTTP. And as you can see here, I have some I've listed some operations that you can do. If you want to create an object, you will use a post. If you want to read, you will use a get. If you want to update, a put. If you want to delete here, HTTP command will be used. And you can leverage this to change, to modify, or to update your configuration, right? I have shared with you some link here at the bottom if you want to have a look, if you are interested to have a deep dive into the AVI API. Everything is fully documented here. You will need to select what kind of authentication you want to use when it's about creating your API session. Of course, by default, it's better to use a session authentication versus the basic authentication here. And if you are using SAML, for instance, here what we can do is we can provide a token that you can get directly from the API to make sure that later you can reuse this token, which get a lifetime here for handling authentication. We have something quite important to understand when you are creating an API session. There is a header which is called the AVI version header. And this header is very useful because basically when you specify this header, and this is a mandatory parameter, you are saying to your AVI controller which version you want him to behave. So let's say you have your AVI controller in 22.1.1, but you want your AVI controller to behave in version 21.1.1. In this case, when you create your API session, you will send this parameter AVI version equals 21.1.1. And because the AVI controller will see this parameter, it will respond with the same behavior as if it was in 21.1.1. This is quite useful because sometimes you need to upgrade your AVI solution, including your AVI controller, but you are not sure that this new version will work with your automation tools. So you can still upgrade your AVI controller, but for an API perspective, again, by using this AVI version header, you can say to your AVI controller, I know that you are using 22.1.1, but please behave as if you were in 21.1.1. So that's good because again, that allows you to see or to change the API object structure according to the version that you are sending, and this could be very useful for different use cases as I have explained. Now let's say that you need to know about the AVI controller API and you need some help and you need to understand how it works. We have something embedded into the tool, into the product, which is called Swagger. This is something which is not related to AVI, but we have embedded this into the UI, and you can basically play with the API directly by leveraging Swagger. So let me show you. If I go to my AVI controller here, and let's say I want to interact with the API, quite easy. You go on these three dots here, and you select AVI API documentation, and you end up using Swagger, as you can see here, right? And let's say I want to see all my pools or all my virtual service. Let's say I want to see all my pools. You type the objects that you want to use. So in this case, pool. And here you have all the CLI commands which are related to your pool. So it gives you some information if you want to use the CLI and not the AVI UI. And you have some example of to create, for instance, here a basic pool. But the good thing here, you can even interact with the API. So by using this Swagger, you are already authenticated, right? Because it shares basically the same authentication token than the one for the UI. So as long as my window here will be authenticated, my Swagger will continue to work. So if I want to see, let's say, all my pool, of course, it's about HTTP GET because I want to view my object. So I just need to click on this guy, and you see there is a button here called Try It Out. And from this button here, I can definitely interact with the API. You see there is only one field, one specific header which is required, which is the AVI version, the one that I was talking about. So right now, if you check, I am using version 22.1.1. So I can use this one here. I can say I want to use 22.1.1. And you click on execute here, and I am already authenticated. So I see exactly which command I was using. So curl, you see here, I am using a header just to make sure my format is JSON here, and another header to tell which version of the AVI controller I want this API to behave. And you see the answers. So you see I have 7 pools configured. So if I go back to the UI here and I go to the pools, I should see a list of 7 here, 2, 4, 6, 7. That's correct. And you see all the information. So I told you already that in the UI, sometimes some specific parameters, let's say for corner use cases, they are not exposed to the UI. However, in the API, you will see everything. So you see the amount of pools that I have. And for each pool here, you will see I have a result, which is a list of objects. And for each pool, you will see one specific entry here. So you should go until this guy here. You see this is my pool number 1. So here you have all the parameters for my pool number 1. You can see somewhere is name, pool1 underscore VMware underscore hello. You can see which cloud it belongs to. You see this is this specific cloud. And remember, I've told you that in the API, we don't care about the name, we care about the UID. So you see the cloud UID that this pool is attached to. You see also his own UID. You see plenty of information. So if I, for instance, if I take this guy here and I want to see only this specific object, I can copy this. I can go there here, and I should be able to see only this pool here. So very quickly, I can see all the information of this specific object by sending a query, a GET query on this specific API endpoint, which is my pool number 1 here. And from here, I can see all the information. My internet browser here is doing a pretty print, so it's a little bit better. If I click for raw data here, it's ugly, right? So I prefer to do this one here. And then you see, for instance, which server is inside this pool. So you see I have this specific server here, this IP 203, and this specific second server here, 204. If I go back to my UI here on my dashboard, you will see that this is those 2 guys, not here, sorry, it's the wrong one, this one, 203 and 204. This is my pool 1 VMware hello, exactly the same than this guy here if you check the name, this guy, right? So you have all the details, all the information about a single object or about many objects, depending of the type of request that you are doing here, you get this information, right? So if you are not a developer, and if some developers ask you the question, where can I get the documentation about the API? Of course, in my previous slide here, I have shared, let's say, a PDF of this specific guide that you can leverage, but also directly within the product, you have Swagger. And this is very useful because for each type of object, if you check it, at the bottom here, you have the object model, right? So you have everything related to each format of each component or parameters of this pool object. I can tell you that there is, let's say, this analytics profile, and it's a dictionary. And inside this dictionary, you have this key, which is enable real-time metrics, and the value, it's a Boolean, right? So you know exactly all the formatting, all the different type of variables that we are using inside this specific object. So very useful to get all those information and to have this documentation directly within the product. I wanted to tell you something else, but I think I just forgot what I wanted to mention here. Of course, you can use those parameters when you are doing your request. They are not mandatory. Only the API version usually is mandatory. But if you want to filter, for instance, just by a specific name, you can use this one here. So you have different capabilities that you can use with this swagger. It's very useful to use this if you want to understand the API structure and how you can automate this. Now I've told you that everything is JSON in the AVI configuration, and you can double check this. I mean, you see the pull configuration. As you can see, this is JSON format, and this is very good because JSON is something very portable, something that you can translate also to other kind of format like YAML. But what I wanted to show you first is some simple data structure or object structure that we have for a virtual service. Because at the end of the day, the most important for you is to make sure you can consume virtual service very easily for your application. So you want to understand that in a virtual service, what do we have? Well, in a virtual service, as you can see, it's always attached to a specific cloud. Here you can see I have a cloud reference, which is my default cloud. And I have also what I call a VS VIP, which is a VIP inside my virtual service. It's a separate object which has been defined just here, as you can see. And right now here I am configuring this specific fixed IP for this VS VIP. And later in my virtual service, I will need to reference this VS VIP inside my virtual service. I have also a list of port, which basically means on which TCP or UDP port I am listening here. So right now this is port 80 without SSL. And I have also a reference of my pool that I am using with this virtual service, right? So you understand the virtual service is basically, it's attached to a specific cloud. You have a public IP, or sorry, an IP that you are using to expose this application, and you have a pool. And inside the pool, what you have pool members. Oops, sorry. You have pool members. And those pool members, they are defined just here. You have .71 and .72, right? So what we want to highlight here is how easy it is to read this and to understand this. Even if you are not a load balancer expert, this is a basic load balancing VIP configuration. And this is very easy to understand, even again, if you are not a developer or if you are not a load balancer expert. We have some features here which allows you to do some one transaction API call, but inside this transaction API call, you will do several things. For instance, you can delete one virtual service and all the objects that are attached to this virtual service. So basically, instead of sending an API call to delete my virtual service, the VIP attached to this virtual service and the pool attached to this virtual service, you can just leverage those API call, and in one API call, it will remove everything, the VS, the VIP, and the pool. And if one of them fails, in this case, I will do a rollback and I will not delete the entire list of objects that I wanted to delete, right? So we have those API calls. And of course, later, those API calls, they can be leveraged by other tools like Ansible or Terraform or VRO. That's why we are talking about the foundation, about the REST API. And later, I will demonstrate how you can use those tools to interact with the AVI API. Same here, you see we delete one virtual service, and automatically all the related object will be deleted with only one single API call. We have some API endpoint for inventory. That's quite useful because if you want to create some dashboard and reports, and I think one of the questions before was related to this, how I can see, for instance, all my virtual service, how I can create some reports. Definitely you can leverage those API endpoint to make sure that you have a list of virtual service with all the parameters that you want to display in your reports here. So quite interesting to see that and to leverage those inventory APIs to have a snapshot of the state of the different objects that you want to monitor here. Likewise, for the metrics, we have the API endpoints that you can use here. And I have specified here some documentation that you can leverage, but also some endpoints that you can use. For instance, this guy here, you see you use this endpoint. You want to check for virtual service. You want to see, let's say, the layer 4 client average bandwidth. You want to see the layer 7 client average complete responses, etc. And you can provide some parameters to control how many response you will get from the APIs, right? So you get those endpoints here that are useful, especially if you want to export those information to something else. We are not talking about logs here. We are talking about metrics. Remember, for the logs, it comes directly from the service engine. They can stream the logs to the AVI controller, of course, but also to something else, as we mentioned before. What about the SDK? Well, as you know, the SDK will provide basically a wrapper that will help you to connect to the API. They will handle API session management. Of course, if there is something wrong with the network, hopefully we have error handling, and we have also some functions that you can get, that you can use, for instance, to manage the different objects of the AVI solution. So the SDKs, they are available for Python, Go, and Java. And of course, they are very useful for if you want to use this specific programming language and if you want to integrate with AVI. I have shared with you the GitHub repo that where you can see all the information. And just one comment here: if you want to install the Python SDK, you can leverage pip in Python to do so. All right, let's move on and see how we can interact with the API by leveraging the AVI Ansible collection. So the first thing that you want to do in Ansible is make sure that you install this specific Ansible collection ALB. Here you have this GitHub repo that you can leverage. And also I have shared with you some example where you can leverage this specific Ansible collection, right? And of course, with Ansible or with Terraform or with any other tools, that it's very easy because you don't need basically to know a programming language. You can just define in a very declarative way what you want, and Ansible will communicate with your AVI controller, and it will create the AVI API session. And when this session is created, it will tell your AVI controller, oh, by the way, I want this VSVIP, I want this pool, and I want to create this virtual service. All right, so something quite easy to use. And here you have an example, but instead of just using this example, what I propose is we can just use a demonstration that I have prepared for you about Ansible. So let me show you what I have. So I need to go to this guy here. And let me just clear this a little bit like this. So I have one repo here, which is this guy, Ansible, AVI, virtual service, IPAM, and DNS. So basically here, what I want to do is I want to create a virtual service leveraging Ansible. This is my use case, right? And prior to this, I have already configured my AVI controller with IPAM capability and with DNS capability. So the only information that I need actually to provide to this Ansible playbook is which network I want to use for my new VIP, right? Which network I want to use for my new VIP, which FQDN I want to use for this new application along with the domain name, right? And which pool members I want to use for the pool that I will create for this virtual service. So if I show you the variables that I have for this YAML file, as you can see here, I have defined a list with two servers, .203 and .204. And I have also the server port that I want to use. So I want to use TCP or HTTP. And I have my default class that I will use for this virtual service, the domain name, and on which network I will use for my VIP, right? And all of the other stuff here, they are actually they are optionally, right? It's just I put them because I wanted to try some other stuff, but those things here, those variables, they are mandatory to create my new virtual service. So only the IP of my servers, the TCP ports that I will use on my servers as well. And you see here the domain name along with this network name that I will use for my VS VIP. That's it. The name of my VIP is just defined here. It will be called Ansible-app1. And I will use these variables to create my VS VIP. So I have here a YAML file, which is my my playbook. And if you check here, you see that I am leveraging this VMware ALB collection that I have shared with you in the slide. And I will do many things here. I will get the networks. I will retrieve some network details because I know exactly which one I want to use. It was one of the variables that I had in my datas that I showed you before. I will create an HTTP health monitor. And then I will create a pool without server. And then I will update a pool with my servers. I will create a VS VIP. And later I will create a virtual service, right? So let's have a try and see if it works. So Ansible playbook, oops, sorry. Let me type this again, Ansible-playbook. Okay, this guy should work like this. Okay, so let's see. First of all, let's go back to my AVI UI and see how many virtual service I have, just to make sure what I'm doing makes sense. Oops. It seems that, okay, this guy is dead. Okay. Here I have, how many? 13 virtual service, right? You can see it, my 13 virtual service. So the intent here is by leveraging this Ansible playbook, I should get a new one, right? So AVI does plenty of things right now. I mean, this Ansible playbook is doing plenty of things, but we are interested by the yellow ones, right? So it has created a health monitor. You see here, it's called Ansible-Health Monitor 1. It has created a pool without server, and it has updated this pool with my two servers, 203 and 204. And you see it has created a VS VIP, and it has created also a virtual service. Of course, it has assigned the VS VIP to the virtual service and also the pool that we have created before to the virtual service. So if I go back to my UI here, you see that now I have 14 virtual service. And you see that one of them is called Ansible app1. So this is the one that I have just created. And if I just mouse over here, it says, oh, by the way, for this one here, I need to create a new service engine because probably I don't have enough capacity with my existing service engine. So automatically, it's a very declarative solution. I'm saying what I need. The AVI controller is checking again what I have configured in my service engine group, how many virtual service I have, what is my HA mode, what is my current capacity, what if I lose a service engine, and AVI says I need an additional service engine, or even probably two, I'm not sure. So he is creating this service engine automatically. And later, when this guy will be up and running, connected back to the AVI controller, he will push the AVI configuration on it, and this virtual service will work for you. But you see here, this VS has been configured already. It's not up and running because of the reasons that I have just explained, but it has been configured. So if I go to my dashboard here, and if I extend this Ansible app1, you see all the configuration is up. It's just that my service engine, they are not up and running. So this will happen later. So it gives you some information and some visibility on how I can create this specific virtual service. And you remember the different variables. I don't have a lot here. Oops, not this one. That one here. Let me just clear that just to make it more pretty. So you see, there are my variables. And again, just ignore this one here. I mean, like we can easily remove that. So we don't need to give a lot of parameters variable here. It's just about the IPs, the cloud, and the domain name that I want to use and on which network I want to create this VIP. And because AVI has a DNS and the IPAM already configured, if you check here, automatically, later you will see, if I go on this view here, I have an app domain name which has been created automatically because I mentioned that I want to use this vcenter.avi.com, and here it has used the same name as the application for my FQDN here. And I have also this VSVIP, which has been assigned fully automatically, right? So hopefully you understand that this is extremely fast to create a new VIP for your application. It will take probably 1 minute, one more minute here to have this service engine available. And later I will be able to use my application just by leveraging this FQDN directly. All right. So I cannot see a lot of questions related to this. So let's move on to another. Yeah.
No question. I can confirm. So
okay,
better
no problem.
Explanation of this, you.
So let's move on to more or less the same, right? But using Terraform. So I want to show you that we can do exactly the same, but instead of leveraging Ansible, we can leverage Terraform. And here you have all the details about the AVI Terraform provider. So you know how you can retrieve the documentation, you know where you can find the Terraform provider, and you have also here some examples about some files that you can use with this Terraform provider. Just give me 1 sec, please. So I want to demonstrate this Terraform provider by doing exactly the same demonstration, right? So what I have prepared this morning is this on this specific VM here, I have another folder which is called Terraform AVI VS IPAM DNS. So you should do exactly the same. So I will go in this repo here, And again, I will show you the variables. And as you can see, it's more or less the same here. You define on which cloud you want to have this virtual service, which network you want to use for this VIP. And here you define basically which pool server I will use. So remember, again, this 203 on port 80 and this 204 on port 80. You define which domain name you want to use, and basically all of the other variables, they are basically optional, right? You don't have to configure them. So doing that here, the only thing that I need to do, I need to just do a Terraform init here, just to make sure I have the last version of my Terraform provider, my Terraform AVI provider. And what I want to do here is I can do a Terraform apply. Let me just try to search for this one here. Here it is. So I'm doing a Terraform apply, and you know, all the time I did the same for Ansible. I have here my credentials just to make sure I can authenticate against my AVI controller. Once I've done that, I just need to type enter, and Terraform is telling me, oh, by the way, you see here, I will create 4 resources. So it will be a pool, it will be a health monitor, it will be a VIP, and it will be a virtual service. This is the 4 resources that Terraform will create. So it asks me the question, do you want to go ahead? Say yes. And now you see it says AVI Health Monitor creating. Yes, creating a VS VIP, creation complete for the health monitor, creating a pool, creation complete for the VS VIP, creation complete for the pool, and then it's creating the virtual service, and it finished by creation complete for the virtual service. So now if I go back to my UI here, I'm happy because my Ansible app is up and running. So if I take this guy here and I try my application like this, I can see my application works, you see. And here it's always the same server because by default, the load balancing algorithm is not round robin, it's the least connected server, I believe. So that's why it's always going to the same server. So you see my Ansible app now, it's working. So it was just a few minutes for this app to be up and running. And you see now I have a new app. I have 15 applications, and one of them is this Terraform app. So again, if I take this guy here, I don't know about the IP. Everything has been configured automatically. I just paste the FQDN of this application, and now you see my application is also working. It seems to be a little bit slow. Let me check what is happening here. Oh, it's because this one here is listening only on port 443, as you can see. So if I just put HTTPS here, this will help my application. And now we should see the same. You can see my Terraform application, which is using here round robin, as you can see, is working as well. So if I go back to this specific file with my variables, I think I should have round robin somewhere. Here you see load balancing algorithm round robin. So whatever tool you are using, it could be Ansible. We are providing collections which include some Ansible modules. If you are using Terraform, we are providing a Terraform provider, which is again fully supported by AVI. And inside this Terraform provider, you have some Terraform resources that you can use. So what I will do when Nicolene will send the link with a copy of the slides, I will also mention the GitHub repo of those demonstrations that I have used. If you want to try it on your side, I'm happy to share this with you. That could give you a good starting point if you want to automate the virtual service creation. So it's just a few examples here to show you again that it's not difficult to automate AVI. and it's not difficult to make this available inside your organization, just to make sure that it works and it's easy to consume by your application teams, by yourself, or by other members of your organization. All right. Any questions or any thing you want to add, Massimiliano, on this chapter?
No, nothing, because nobody asking, so there is no
So I have two. I can make a guess here. It's a long workshop, 4 days. It's almost the end of the workshop, so either I'm not clear at all, or either people they are tired of listening to me, which I can totally understand. So ping us just to let us know that you are here, guys, and hopefully what I'm saying is clear. If it's not, I'm very sorry, but hopefully this is not the case. And of course, you will get, thank you for the ping, guys. You will get a copy of the recording later today, along with a slide deck. You will get also, again, I will mention the different repos that I was using here for the session today. So having said that, we have closed the latest chapter of this workshop. I want to close this by first of all reviewing what we have studied during the last 4 days. You have the agenda displayed here, but I want to tell you at the end that what is unique with this AVI solution is this architecture, and the fact that you have basically someone to help you. You have someone to help you because your application, they are becoming extremely, the number of application is high and high and high, because you get a lot of new application because of the nature of your business, because of the nature of the architecture of your application, leveraging microservices and other technologies. You need to get help. And the one who can help you is this AVI controller, because you delegate basically tasks to this guy and he will handle the job for you. So with this AVI controller, we can definitely do more with less. Instead of having you managing your islands of legacy load balancers, you can definitely leverage this AVI controller. So it is, let's say, my closing statement here. And I want just to thank you again. We'll share this with you. Here you have all the information that you can use if you want to try more with AVI. We have some great hands-on lab. You go to labs.hol.vmware.com. You can leverage those AVI hands-on labs. You can go to customerconnect.vmware.com. You can download the AVI software. We have the documentation mentioned here. You can always send an email to learnavi.vmware.com, or if you want to share some positive feedbacks, guys, happy to get that on learnavi@vmware.com. You can always also connect again to another workshop. We have another one like this in November. And again, we will include some new features of the product, including the botnet management features. Here you have also a link if you want to get a certification. You have the link if you want to connect to this this exam. And if you want to attend webinars, you have also the link. So again, just one final word. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all your questions. And hopefully it was useful for everyone. Happy to see you soon for another workshop or for another session for the AVI product. Thank you, Massimiliano, for your massive help today and yesterday. And again, I wish you a very good day, everyone. Take care, and we speak soon.
You're welcome. So thank you, guys, and have a good day.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.